Okay, so I'm just going to reintroduce myself again. Alan Byrne here. Welcome to Menstuff. How should man live? Tonight's theme is men, work, family, and career. I'm just waiting on our host Liam O'Gogan to join us, and I'm hoping that anybody who's out there tonight now will get involved in our conversation. I'm just looking here along the right-hand side to see who's joined us. I can see there's 20 people up on top. So let me see. These are all people who are actively watching. So anybody who feels like they need to join us, please do so. We're still waiting on Liam Og to join us. Don't know where he's gone. So maybe I'll just see if I can track him down. Here he's coming in now. So there you go, Liam. Yeah, I just introduced everyone to the show tonight, and hopefully there's a few people already signed up by the looks of it. So when you get an opportunity there now, you can introduce yourself. Don't know what kept you.
All right, yeah, just had a bit of feedback on that other on the laptop there, Alan. So just
to let you know, I'm recording it already. Yeah, right. I hit the record button. Yeah.
Okay, I was just wondering we might.
Will I stop recording and then you start?
No, I'm not sure how that'll work, Alan. So maybe it says pause recording on this.
Yeah, because it's running. Yeah, I'm running it.
Yeah, we just pause it for a few minutes. I'll pause it. Just let me pause.
Yeah.
I'm not sure that the kind of social constructions answers that we have these days that are saying, you know, men should stay at home or can easily stay at home and rear, especially young infants and young kids, and women can go out and work, and that's all hunky-dory. I don't see that as being the solution either.
Just in relation to that now, Derek, what you're talking about and what you said, you started this conversation, Liam, just about going back to the 60s. But if you go even further back again, you talk, say, the Industrial Revolution or post-Industrial Revolution, between the start of the 20th century and the First World War, and then the First World War to the Second World War. You mentioned a psychologist in the UK, Derek, but there's another guy who you'll probably be familiar with, John Bowlby. And one of the things that, and again, this is part of the social construct. I see everybody goes on about all this and, you know, men's roles, women's roles, but there's actually people sit down and actually decide how this is all going to pan out as well. The social construction during the First World War was that men went to war, and then who was going to do all the work that those men walked away from, left behind them. So women stepped into the role of that. They also worked in the armaments industry because they had to produce the weapons the men were using. And that went on for like several decades because it rolled into the Second World War. And then all of a sudden they decided that all these women on the manufacturing lines working away, and they says, no, we don't want that. So let's get them back into the home. And the psychologists came up with the plan that, you know, this is good for children. Children need women. It's all a load of bollocks, you know. So I don't know what you think about it.
So you
just a minute, guys. Just to say that I think we forgot to start recording.
Oh, that's an awful pity.
We missed maybe the first 5, 6, 7 minutes, guys. So just this is really for the future reutilization of this. Just again, if you're live here, that's fine. You know what's happening. If you're watching it play, just again, welcome to. There was the first program in the Blab of this year, 2016, from this our process called Menstuff. How should men live? With a question mark. And tonight's topic, we're talking about work life balance for men, what it means, etc. And the element we've been, you know, just before we started recording there, Derek, you started, you know, relating to the massive shift that had taken place in men's work experiences through the Industrial Revolution. And I spoke to you earlier this week about, I used to attend a number of conferences and that, basically in the late 90s and the 2000s, run through the European Union, often in Brussels, etc. And I found it quite fascinating that on mainland Europe, there was a different conversation going on. they would perceive that England particularly had a much, no, I don't know about the States, we'll leave that for a moment, but just that England would have had a huge schism because of the level of shifting towards the Industrial Revolution. Like, England became one big factory very rapidly. And they would say that before this happened, that the traditional family structure was based in living off the land and things like that. So that men, women, kids, they were all around the house essentially, or the farm at the same time, and did much more interaction with each other during the day, which is in fact even the way schools developed. There were long school holidays during the summer period to enable those kids to work, to help working out in the farms. And that changed in the view of the Europeans, that it changed more rapidly and more drastically in England than perhaps it did in mainland Europe. And they were reflecting on how that affected family policy and things like that. And again, Alan, you've brought in the fact that during the two world wars, it suited society to leverage those women into the traditional jobs that were normally worked. Just again, I'm going to welcome Alan Moore in. Thanks for joining us, Alan.
Oh, great.
I think he's just going to come in there. Just when we're coming in, I was speaking to Alan during the week, and I know he's regularly been in their shows, and I often wondered, was he shy to come on the table or something? And it was really interesting what he said to me. I'll let him explain here now when he comes in. I think you're talking there. Hi, Alan. So maybe.
Wow, did the sound just went crazy there for a second? How are you guys?
How you doing now?
Might tell us where you were lurking this last few sessions, will you?
Well, yeah, I've watched. I'm just interested in this area, and obviously, love listening, sitting there and listening to you talking. But yeah, I have been. Liam has asked me why I didn't come in and say hello in the past, and I let him know that the reason I hadn't was because I was in. It's 7 o'clock. It's just the time that I put my kids to bed. I have four kids, but the two smaller ones, that's the time I put them to bed. So I couldn't really say hello because I was in a darkened room trying to get them settled with the earphones on, listening to this. I usually, what I do now is I just stay in the room with them because it helps them. They know I'm around, so they're not messing and running around and whatever, and it helps them settle and go to sleep. So, yeah, I was sitting in a darkened room with two kids with the earphones on, listening to this. Yeah. So they have my presence there, No,
I thought when you told me this, but I never saw it. I never saw that one coming. But it also brought through to me the power of this type of internet-based video streaming dialogue. That as you could be doing something like parenting and still listening in on your phones. So the potential reach is fantastic.
Multitasking, yeah.
It's very, very true. And someone can be sitting in their car driving along and be listening. Or I do that a lot with podcasts, or whatever. You could be cleaning the house, doing the cutting the grass or whatever, and you're still listening.
Yeah. Just on the topic, Alan, I mean, again, you told it, like with 4 kids, there's a lot of demands, and I know you've constantly tried to find innovative ways of being there with your kids and still manage to put in a shift and pay the bills. And I should have said at the outset of this, some of this conversation, and it's easy for me to have. I took early retirement out of a job. My dependency periods in terms of looking after other people no longer exist. So I have a lot of, it's unfair in a way for some of the things that I might say that might project onto another generation of people who have different demands. And I need to be mindful of that,
Yeah, everyone's in a completely different situation, especially nowadays, because, as Alan was saying earlier on, the roles are a lot more fluid, and it's a double-edged sword, because you could look at it as in, I don't know what I'm supposed to do. That's one way of looking at it. I don't know what am I supposed to do. I don't know what I'm supposed to do. But another way of looking at it is I can do anything I want now. There is no specific role that I have to do. And that's going to be tough. For me, I know I wanted to run the business and also be around my kids, which I've successfully done on and off. It can be tough at times. But that doesn't fall into everyone else's life plan all the time. So you can be, it can be upsetting other people at times. So it's kind of double-edged sword, But I think as a man, you need to decide what you want to have in your life, and you've got to pursue that. And you're never going to make everybody happy. There's people who love you and the people who won't love you, and you have to just live with that.
But I mean, can I ask, Alan, when you were, say, 20 years of age, did you have a sense of obligation? or did you have
zero obligation at 20 years old?
You which?
It's zero obligation at 20 years old. Had no sense. I have obligation to myself, to my career, and to doing what I needed to for my life. But I didn't feel any obligation to any other person at 20 years old.
But did you feel, looking forward, why did you want a career, for example? Is it that you wanted to enjoy a career, or did you feel you had to go to work, or?
Yeah, I know. I'll tell you my story a little bit, because it's not the general story that people will have. You know, the way it's supposed to happen is you go to school, you get good grades, you go to college, you go into a particular job, and that's what you're supposed to do. I didn't do that. I left home when I was 17. I was very, very difficult time in my life. I did the leaving, but I didn't get great results in the leaving. I passed it, but it wasn't enough to go to college or anything like that. But I wanted to be a designer when I left school. I wanted to be a designer more than anything. So I went out with the intention of doing that, and I knocked on doors, and I went around. I told people what I wanted to do, and it was tough. I got some jobs. I did some work for free at times, and but eventually I got it, into a place where I had a very good job. I was working in the Centre, which is in the IFSC, and I was looking after all their design stuff. And then at that stage, I wanted to learn about the web. I was very excited. That was around 2000. Very exciting. The web was just kind of happening. Actually, it was before that, because I was in Galway when 9/11. That was 2001. So it was probably about 98, 97, 98. And I met up with a guy, Chris, who was from Switzerland. He came over. He's just after coming over to Ireland. He fell in love with Ireland, and he wanted to set up a web. He had a web company in Switzerland, and he wanted to set up a web company here. And I really wanted to get into the web. So I went down and I did whatever needed to be done, including going to meetings with him and setting up the company and everything else. Because that's just what I wanted to do, And at that time, no, I had no obligation to anybody. I wanted to do the things that I wanted to do. It's different when you have kids. Obviously, when you have kids, you have obligations to other people.
Yeah, I mean, the other thing I keep thinking of, I was relating that to, say, the life in 1960. I mean, I was born in 56. I would have been a baby then. But I think I was saying to Alan before we came on there about jobs with the name man in them, like a policeman,
yeah,
man, and a postman. And one, they were all men, but the jobs, the careers you could have so many years ago were quite linear. They were quite, I suppose, limited in texture, if nothing else. And, a nurse was a woman. But certainly these words, a fireman, a milkman. So you were identified almost
as a man,
being as, Ernie the milkman. He rides the fastest.
And it was your identity as well. What do you mean by texture?
Well, I'm just thinking that nowadays, even when you describe a job as a designer, you could be designing heating, you could be designing bolts.
Very true, actually. That's a good point.
Such a depth of mixtures of possibilities of things one can do. And it's interesting, as you said, even at the point at which you left school, even at that point, if you go back, say, 20 years ago, the having and not having of the Leaving Cert was not actually the end of the universe. Whereas 20 years, in 1960, very few people in Ireland went to second level education.
Yeah, true. The
norm would have been that an achievement would have been to enter an apprenticeship, which probably your father and your grandfather were in, because the nature of how jobs were grouped in towns was, large numbers of people working in fixed buildings on the clock, and you had to get in through the family, whether it's in the glass business or the brewery business or the shoemaking business or whatever. So a young man growing up in that environment, I'm interested is they often would have learned about the rudiments of behaviour and life through the induction process of being around other older men.
Yes.
Now that I don't think that you're going to learn much about being a man necessarily through your work. I wonder if you have any views on that, Darren?
Yeah, I actually have a lot of views on that, actually. It's interesting what you say. I passed the Leaving, but it was made very, very clear to me at the time that because I didn't go to college, I'd ruined my life. Now, I didn't fully believe that, but it's difficult when you get that message all the time not to internalize it a little bit, I think that absolutely in the past, young boys would have learned about working and being a man from other older men, and that we've gone through a period where that isn't happening right now. Because when a child goes to, let's say they go to creche or daycare, for anyone who's listening from America, they're mostly looked after by women. And then they go to primary school, where again, it must be 78% women where they be looked after. And a lot of staying out of trouble is finding how to make these women happy, and that they're not that you're not making them upset. So they build a lot of skills for not upsetting women, but they really don't learn much about being a man. And it's the same as you probably come in, there's more men than in secondary school, and obviously in college there'll be more men again, but they never really, it's difficult in these days. I think I'm doing it to some extent, but it's difficult these days for a dad to teach his kids about doing the things they need to do in their life. Now, I think I'm doing it because I'm consciously doing it. I'll sit and talk to them about stuff like setting goals and work and stuff like that. And I think these days, the way it is today is that the jobs that my kids are going to be doing are not being taught to them in school. They haven't even been invented yet, a lot of them. The job that I did when I left school hadn't been invented while I was in school. When I was in school, there was really no internet. I guess maybe the US government had built something, but it certainly wasn't any internet that I knew anything about. And I'm pretty sure that the jobs that my kids do, they haven't been invented yet. So the only thing that you can really teach your kids these days is how to be adaptable, how to know what they want, and how to and there's just certain things that. Go ahead, yeah. Go ahead, yeah.
Can I say there, lads? Yeah. Well, look, we were talking there. We kind of started off talking about, in these times we're in now, there's an equality stuff out there. It's this idea that men and women are basically the same. Now, coming from, as I said earlier on, the idea of men and women being innately different, which is where I'd lean towards that direction. There's an idea out there that women are born but men are made. So basically the idea is that young girls are taken very clearly and coherently into full personhood, through the fact that they're born through a person of their own gender. They're nurtured, as Alan said there. Young kids have always been in the company of women. So young girls are in the company of people of their own gender, whereas boys, it's completely different. They're in the company. They're born through the mother. They're in the company of women for the first 6 or 7 years of their life, and that's why all indigenous societies all had a rites of passage where they basically, whipped the young guy out of the world of women and into the world of men. And that's what had to happen. And so these days, this idea that women are rearing kids now, primary schools, as you rightly say, is 90% women. Secondary schools as well. And as we were saying there, the old trades are gone. That kind of mentorship that used to happen on building sites and in so many industries where young guys would go and work with their uncles or whatever, and they would be nurtured maybe into manhood. All that stuff is dying away now, and with the result, that there's a gap out there for young men especially, finding out how they should behave in life, how they should be a man. That's missing, and that is a major problem today in today's society, and it's something that's going to increase with this dominant social construction.
Yeah, I'd actually agree that there is no difference. And the interesting thing about you're absolutely right. A lot of it's biology, because women and men are different biologically, and women are persons for just being alive. That is true, and men are persons for things that they do. That's just the way it is to a lot of extent. And I hear what you're saying about men in the past have gone through rituals and stuff like that, and maybe that's what needs to be built now. Because the thing about male energy is it's either going to male energy can be destructive, and the way to but there is power in the male energy, and if you if you channel it in ways like, for instance, men looking after their kids, men protecting their family, all that kind of stuff, men building businesses or building lives for themselves, it can be channeled very, very well, but it can also be channeled in very, very destructive ways, particularly if there's no guidance. I think young boys definitely need, I think the best thing for them is a father's guidance, but you know, any kind of male guidance is, I think, is a benefit for them, especially honesty. Sorry.
Well, you know, just talking about there, you know, about the energy, young male energy, and there's a saying that I came across recently there, you know, if I can remember exactly what it is, but it's something about, if you don't, you know, if a community doesn't integrate the young men into society, if they don't initiate men into society, into the village, I think it was, they'll burn the village, you know. And it's this idea, you know, that's why gangs arise, you know, because men have an innate desire to connect with other men and find out how to be a man. So if the natural processes or structures in society don't exist anymore, they will gravitate towards unhealthy ways of, you know, initiating themselves, or, you know, having other guys who are, you know, dysfunctional in some way, have them initiate them. And that's why we see so much, you know, the gang stuff, you know, even the isolation stuff in lots of ways. This is unhealthy, you know, this is guys trying to, but not being able
it's
to find
very,
a way
very
to
true. And, you know,
integrate
I even hesitate saying this, but you have to ask yourself how many of the gangs are violent male, or even rapists in society, come from an area where they have had no connection with the father. The father has been out of the home. I don't know the answer to that. I'm asking the question. I don't have a clue. Maybe it's zero, but I imagine it's more than that. That there has been no guidance from a father. There has been no, or a very, very weak father who's being controlled by the woman, or either that or just being thrown out of the house. And the boy sees, well, what being a man means is having, you know, working all your life, giving all your money away, losing your home, losing your kids, and being bad-mouthed for the rest of your life. That's what it means to be a man. So, you know, it's like the Eminem thing. You know, I don't know if you've ever seen this thing with Tupac. There's a video that shows Tupac, and first of all, he's saying, well, you know, I see other men, and they call women the B word, and they're very disrespectful, and I could never be disrespectful to a woman because, you know, I love my mother and all that kind of stuff. And then a couple of years later, you see the same guy, Tupac, who's like completely different. He's like, well, you know, I learned that women don't respect me when I'm being nice like that. So I'm this other guy now who does no respect for women, and then he gets any woman he wants. So but he would have been brought up as well in, you know, I do think that Tupac was a very, very talented person, but he was also brought up in a situation I don't think he knew who his father was and that kind of thing as well. You know?
Yeah, just can I say, guys, you were talking there about you know, learn to be a man, etc. And the words that I was just trying to remember the words of a song. I originally heard it sung by the Black Family, you know, from the inner city in Dublin. Obviously, people would know through Mary Black and her sister Frances.
Frances Black, yeah.
But the song is "School Day's Over," and I was just pulling up the lyrics there. And I think just to listen from it, "School day's over, come on there, John. It's time to be getting your pit boots on. On with your sack and your moleskin trousers. Time you were on your way. Time you were learning the pitman's job and earning the pitman's pay. Come on then, Jim, it's time to go. Time you were working down below. Time to be handling a pick and a shovel. You start at the pits today. Time to be learning the collier's job and earning a collier's pay." And it just recently in England, I think the last operational coal mine closed down, and I was looking at a documentary looking at these guys, and they'd lived all their lives, and their fathers and grandfathers before them had done it, and they don't know where to go. They don't know where to go next. They've never lived overground, to be honest with you. But I think that there was a lot of older certainty in the way in which you picked up your value systems, being around a fairly non-changing environment. And when Derek talks there, I certainly think in those periods when young men went astray, as really when their over-exuberant energy spilled over. Nothing bad about the energy, but spilled over. there was groups of older men. There was a sort of peer mass. I mean, Jerry Moore described it once as the elephants, the older elephants would just stamp there, and the younger elements would almost come into rhythm, almost in some sort of non-tactile resonance. And we are absolutely in a different era now. I think for any person who has children, you touched on it there, Alan, about the changing nature of work. I was at a conference in the new University of Ulster a couple of years ago about future planning in education. And the presenter played a musical track, and everybody in the audience bopped to it. And it was a Rolling Stones or Beatles track. And then she played another track, and nobody knew anything about it. And she said to us, "That's this week's number one. That tells us all about just those where you people psyche stuck in the past." And she has this comment, Alan, which you've borne evidence of. She said, "Most children going into primary school today will work in careers that don't yet exist." So the pedagogical challenge is, how will we prepare our children for a world that we don't know what it's like? Now, when I said in that collier's job scenario, at least men were shown how to behave, how to manage their energies, how to recognize the transitions in their lives from being youthful and over-exuberant to being slightly older and a little wiser, to being much less physically capable, perhaps a lot wiser. So it is a challenge. And when you guys point out the fact that certainly in creches and primary schools, all of the socialization of parenting is essentially taken through a female paradigm. So where is that male insight going to take place? And in fact, how will young guys have any value on older guys? Like somebody described me and Alan as sweet old guys there last week. But who's going to tell these guys, if our stories are completely Neanderthal, why would they listen to us, you know?
Yeah, I'm hearing what you're saying about there was a lot more structure in the past, and there absolutely was, but we're never going to go back to a point where that kind of structure is in place, where your dad was working in the coal mines, so you're going to work in the coal mine. We're never ever going to go back to that. In fact, we're going to go back forward to more flux and more change, and change is happening faster and faster. I think the only way, and I hope I'm not getting off the point here, but I think the only way to instruct young boys now is to allow them to fail. I think the issue with school, that I have the issue with school, is if you fail, it's a really, really bad thing. And I've failed a lot of my life, and I've also been successful at different times in my life. But as you know, I had a business which completely was destroyed, and there was a huge failure. I've also but it's very, very interesting though, because there is a saying that says, 9 out of 10 businesses fail, and I don't believe that's true. I believe 0 businesses fail, because they're looking at a very, very short period of time. If you look at children learning to walk, and with that same point of view, you would say that 100% of children never learn how to walk because they fall at one time. But I think the way it is now is that we've got to teach our boys that, listen, you're going to fall, you're going to go out, things are going to knock you down, this is going to happen, but you've got to get back up. And I would say 0% of businesses fail, because if you look at the person, everybody who's been in a failed business has learned something from it. Some of them have got back up. Steve Jobs was kicked out of his own company, but went on to be the richest man in the world. And but what we've got to teach boys now is resilience, that they can, when they do fail, that they get back up and they start again, and they keep moving forward. I think that's one thing that the Americans have that the Irish need to learn a little bit. And it's not taught in schools, because it's not in schools. It's a very, very bad thing if you fail, but you're not taught, hey, listen, you fail, get back up and keep moving forward. I think that's what.
I think you're right there, Alan. I mean, there's a huge emphasis on not failing, whereas some of the greatest learning you'll ever do in your life is from things that from mistakes, basically, But I'd like to just go a little bit back upstream from that, Alan, if I may. And it ties into that article that I sent you, Liam, and I think you have it here in the chat box, about this idea of the kind of work that's on offer these days, As the article points out, more and more jobs are in the service sector. You know, they're jobs for consumers, for consuming, for people to consume. And I just have a question, you know, and I'll just put it out there. I don't know the answer myself for sure, but you know, or let me say it like this, you know, the article, you know, talks about getting value from work. You know that a lot of the service jobs are out there. You know, the guy calls them bullshit jobs, quite provocatively. You know, are people actually being nurtured from these jobs? Are they getting stuff out of it? You know, like now. I mean, the other extreme there, you know, talking about coal mines and stuff like that. You know, now of course there was no coal mines in this country, and we didn't have an industrial revolution like they had in the UK. But for example, now I worked in construction for many years, and that's very hard work. And I'm not a guy that says, you know, fellas should do that kind of work, and they should be up to their neck in concrete and all that kind of stuff. It's very hard work, and I certainly, you know, don't think guys should be pushed into that kind of work as they would have been in the past. But, you know, there is something about doing practical work that is of value to people. You know, for example, a couple of weeks ago, there's some friends of my wife, and the guy had been out of work, and they had no bathroom light for months on end, right? They just didn't have the money to pay an electrician. Now, I just said to them, look, I'll go over and have a look at that, you know. And I went over the next day, and, you know, I replaced the broken lights and stuff like that. And I felt great. You know, they were delighted. You know what I mean?
That's because it worked, Darren. It didn't work.
There is that. I remember that from construction. You know, you're doing something. But there is something about doing something of real benefit. You know, the article talks about getting, you know, soulful work or getting something, nourishment in your own soul, that you've done something real and tangible for somebody that's of value to somebody. Not like selling them some bloody product that they don't even want. Do you know what I mean? That you're trying to convince them that it's better than last year's model, and last year's model was the bee's knees at the time, you know? So I think there's a real issue here, and I suppose the question I'll throw out here is, you know, women are the consumers. Women are the ones who go to the shopping centres and love to fill the trolleys, and they drag the men. You know, that's a stereotype, I know, right? But they drag the men. Men don't want to do that. Men innately, I don't think, want to consume anything like what women do, you know? So is today's society increasingly being tailored towards creating jobs of benefit to this service sector, consuming culture that's growing, and we're leaving the kind of real jobs, the jobs that you get, that your soul gets value from?
Just I was going to elaborate on something, you know, there that you're talking about,
real value,
Darren.
You know?
I work in the community and voluntary sector, and community employment in particular.
Yeah.
These projects were set up way back 25 years ago. They were aimed at people who were in long-term unemployment to try and get them back into full-time employment through training courses, their skill sets, improving on their skill sets. And I was only interviewing people during the week, and over the last couple of weeks I've had a lot of interviews, and invariably the main reason, especially guys, the main reason they want to get back into work is for peace of mind, for their heads, the headspace, the mental health. It's to get up every day with a purpose, with a focus. Yeah. And the jobs that they're applying for, they aren't great. They're maintenance, hygiene, stuff like that, you know. But without a doubt, that's the main motivator, is to keep people occupied.
Well, you see, you're tapping into this innate thing that is in men to be of productive use to society, you know, to protect and provide innate quality that's in men. And that's fine, and that has to be looked after first. So, I mean, even if you're in a crap job, I think it's better than to be twiddling your thumbs at home and feeling completely useless, especially as a man. But are men not being used really? You know, that the culture, the way society is going, is that the jobs that are being produced are bullshit jobs. There's a lot of bullshit jobs out there, you know. And I mean, another kind of similar kind of idea, you know, that, you know, the innate quality that men have, this innate thing of to protect and provide, you know, big fat generals have used that for decades and have, you know, come up with these wars and you know, used men. So is it not similar? Is it not similar what's going on today? Yes, it's good for guys to be working.
Can I just pose a question there, guys? It's just
are they going to be happy in them jobs long term?
Into this today, it was just a question. Should one enjoy one's work? I mean, have we some sort of natural right to expect? Firstly, now also we're in a Western society. I can tell there's a lot of people in the world who don't think choice doesn't enter onto their menu. So I'm very mindful of that in a worldwide blab. But just taking the world that we live in, I mean, is it a reasonable expectation for a person now, and say for a young man, let's say, coming up through life, so I want the sort of work that I want. Whereas if one goes back to, you mentioned the coal mines, but certainly a lot of the jobs in Ireland, in Dundalk where I came from, would have been a big boot making or shoe making industry. And in the 40s and the 50s, like there was hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people working in the shoe shops, in the manufacturing shops doing things. And the work is extremely repetitive, you know, A to B, click machine, do this. But I interviewed an older man, fabulous guy, Joe Martin, and Joe described to me what used to happen in these things. These were all pre-radio. There was no radio at the time. And actually, he told me that was one of the reasons why the choirs in Dundalk were very active at the time. Because he said in those days, you learn music by buying sheet music. That's the way the money was made rather than records. And people would have learned songs, and all day they sang together. So there was almost a communion of music, which is, you talk there about soulfulness. There was this incredible engagement with those around you. You know, you talked your stuff and what was going on. It was a way of buzzing with each other. Now, so in other words, they may not have enjoyed the physicality of what they're doing, but there was other camaraderie which operated for them. Now, many of the jobs that we work in now, you really don't have that togetherness. You're you know, maybe you're working on a document. In fact, the closest you get to communicating with other people is working with them through Google Docs or something. There's almost no physical technology. But just a question: do we have a right? Do men have a right to say, well, look, I want to work in a job I enjoy. I don't want to do work I don't want to do.
I think that it's important. Obviously, no. Sometimes you just have to pay bills, particularly when you have kids. You just sometimes just have to pay bills. But it depends on the person and their life. You know, I've always wanted to have some purpose and meaning in my work, and I've also before I even would go looking for a specific job. I'm not asking myself what other people are doing, but I'm looking for, you know, what is important to me and what I want to be doing to a large extent. So, and then other people won't do that. But it depends on the person and what they want to get out of life. But do we have no one has a right to it, but it is available. Is available to everybody now. Anyone else want to come in on it?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think, you know, definitely, you know, nobody's entitled to all this choice. You know, I mean, there's a place for choice, of course. You know, and choice is a good thing, but also, you know, people, young men should take on work. You know, that he mightn't actually appeal. They mightn't be fantastic. You know, but at the same time, as you said there, Liam, you should be getting something out of work in the area of kind of community, in the area of satisfaction, whatever that might be. But there should be an element of it. But the actual work, you know, monotonous work, repetitive work, that has to be done, and somebody has to do it. And I think people certainly should.
Like,
be
I'm wondering, is there a
encouraged
sense of
to,
service here?
you know,
I mean, one thing's
take the good with the bad.
Yeah, I hear a lot of talk being held by people whose children are still at home at 30 years of age and won't leave the nest. And, you know, I can see people at that age group. I mean, at 30 years of age, I think, you know, I'm 60 years of age now. 30 years ago, a 30-year-old would be expected at that stage to have created the vast majority of his family, to have put together some sort of a household for himself and his wife and kids, and that level of expectation at the time. So, you know, while you might have been 20 and you were having a good time, you knew that in front of you was you had to do your service as such. I'm just saying, and that allowed you then to, you know, to fit into a process. And I suppose the other aspect I'd like to just bring you to, you then get process, you do your service for a number of years and then you retire. And because if we look at work and career and all the rest, you know, there's a whole what happens at the end of that. I retired at 54 years of age, and I'm interested in this idea of the sense of being purposeless, of having no purpose in society, because I'm no longer considered to be a creator of wealth or whatever, right? So what's my purpose?
But you still have a purpose.
I'm wondering about that idea of purpose after work. And also when we mentioned there that the camaraderie element, that whatever existed then, once you get into a retirement situation, you don't even have that reason to meet up with the guys who work every Friday, every Thursday night. You don't even have a common boss to complain about, you know?
I think that's probably one of the reasons why organizations like Men Sheds have been created. It's to continue that sense of purpose. So the purpose being that the older guys, you know, they have the knowledge and they pass that on then to the younger fellas. Isn't it? If I'm right, that's one of the things about Men Sheds. One of the principles of it, isn't it?
Well, I find a shed here locally when I come up here, and I can't say it's indicative of everything.
Yeah,
what
definitely.
I found was there were younger guys in it than had been in the sheds in Dundalk, where typically you were over in your mid 50s. Here there were younger men a lot of men in their early 40s, etc. I'm not sure there's an awful lot necessarily at this point in time in the Men Sheds of concentration on things being passed on. I think it's about actually just having the company of other men. And, you know, I just know in what we do, like I spent last Thursday night trying to put the head of an axe into the base of a tree trunk so that I can break sticks on it. Because I saw it in a video somewhere. And like we all had great fun. Somebody brought in this old piece of wood and it was a bit wet and we were doing different bits and pieces. And I keep thinking, look, we'll just leave it there. And if you want to break up blocks of wood to make up little sticks, we can have it. But it's not about what was happening. It was about the conversation that was happening while that was happening, which is what you're talking about there, Darren.
Yeah. And, you know, funny enough, just to say this, I mean, you know, we didn't, I'm sure we're finishing up shortly, but, I mean, there's a thing called the Protestant work ethic, you know? And, like, I work ethic there, you know?
Yeah, we hear.
Places, I won't name them, but, you know, and I remember at the time, the south of Ireland was criticised, you know, as being backward, and that men were, what was the word, docile. You know, there was this idea that the Protestant North and England were all, you know, very efficient and all the rest of it, and we were very backward in this country. And you know what, that was true. Now, I don't accept the words backward or anything like that, but what you're talking about there, Liam, the work wasn't about work. It wasn't always about work. There was a social element to work, which meant that jobs took an awful long time to get done. But there was a lot of chat. You know, fellas that go into work and they chat they'd have a cup of tea, they chat, and, you know, they do a bit of work for 10 minutes, you know what I mean? Somebody'd come around the corner, the chat would get going again, you know, that's the way it was. So, we've lost that, you know, and that's, when I see the Men Sheds, I mean, there's a saying about the Men Sheds, it's the most important tool in the shed is the kettle. And you see, there's a natural need for men to do work, but not this kind of regimented, you know, efficiency and isolation that's happening increasingly these days. There has to be a social element to work, and there always was in this country until until relatively recently. When you think about it, I mean, I was 17 when I worked down in a place in County Clare, and that's the way the work was. There was I remember driving from Dublin through the Midlands, at 7, 8 o'clock in the morning. There wouldn't be a sinner awake in half the towns you went through, that laid back attitude was in this country till relatively recently, and there was something in that is very valuable. And when you see guys turn up into the men's sheds, that's what they're trying to recreate.
I'm just reading again from that article you sent me. I thought this an interesting statement. He asks about, this is what he's asking the question: why did Maynard Keynes' prediction that we would have a 15-hour working week by the end of the century, why didn't come true? And he makes this statement: given the choice between less hours and more toys and pleasures, we've chosen collectively the latter. And essentially, I think what he's saying is that part of your man calls this, Charles Handy calls it this chindongo, a Japanese word for things that are very interesting but entirely useless. And, he talks about we've created all these toys in our lives, which then have to be made by somebody who has to be busy making them, somebody has to be busy selling them, and then we have to... You
know what, Liam? I mean, I like yourself, Alan, I have young kids, and I watch them, watch the way the world of kids, the way it exists today, and my guy is big into the Xbox, and they're playing all these games. But what? They actually don't want that, Give them a ball and a few mates out on the road. They'd rather be doing that, because when they have the opportunity to do that, which they don't get these days, they get great buzz out of it, Okay, the Xbox is great. They, even if they had that, they would still go back to the Xbox, don't get me wrong. But all these toys are replacing... We don't need them. They're replacing very natural things that always existed, and that unfortunately are becoming less and less available. I mean, I remember my young guy, at 5 and 6 years of age. We have a very large back garden. Give him a couple of sticks and a hose, during the summer, and you wouldn't see him for dust and a couple of mates. They'd be gone, But increasingly we're being sold this idea that we all need toys. We need these artificial ways of entertaining and living and stuff like that. And I just don't think we do,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I'm hearing what you're saying. I don't know if I 100% agree. I think absolutely I'll go out and play football on the road, and I think that's great. You get a bit of air, and I do a lot of things like going into the woods and stuff with the boys, and I really enjoy that, and they really enjoy it. They love it. And I think particularly with small kids, you have to get them into nature, even if you're just throwing stones into the water at the beach or go to the woods or whatever it happens to be. And football is great for that as well. But I don't agree that, I'd be very... I really, really like technology. I've always really liked technology. I've taken jobs in the past, and the main reason for me to take the job was because of the computer that I was using. It was, a nice Mac, and I couldn't afford it myself. But if I took a specific job, I could be using that, and I took just for that reason. And I've also, as far as work is concerned, I like the community of work and that you could talk to people. But a lot of the time, I'd be working, like, for instance, I had a proposal to do for a client, and I stayed up the whole night to do that proposal during the whole night. And the next day I was really, really in la la land. I didn't know what I was doing, but I got the proposal in the time. And while I was doing that proposal, I felt a real sense of purpose. I felt that I was doing something that was really important, and I just enjoyed the focus of doing it. And there was no other people around me. I was on my own in the room. It was, during the middle of the night. There was no other people there. I wasn't talking to anyone else, but I really, really enjoyed just putting myself into that proposal. And a lot of the work I've done has been like that. It's not so much about community that I'm talking to people. It's just about really doing something that I think is important and putting myself into it. And the technology, absolutely, it's a double-edged sword. My guys play the PlayStation, they play, but I don't mind them so much playing it. I don't think that should be their number one focus. And obviously, they should be out on the road. They should be playing football. We should be doing other things. A lot of that is to parents to make sure that that's happening. Like, for instance, the parents should be going with them somewhere, playing football with them, to make sure they're doing those kind of things. And they will always go back to computers. But I don't think them, knowing about computers or playing games, whatever it is, I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. You can certainly with young kids, if they're playing a lot of the computer game, they can get very frustrated at it, if they're not winning a game or something, and you've got to help them manage their emotions around that. But I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing. I think it can be a bad thing, but anything can be a bad thing. I think it's good for them sometimes to have some ice cream, but obviously you don't want to give them ice cream every single day or for every single meal.
Yeah, no, I know, I understand what you're saying. I'm just, I suppose, thinking generally, like long term, like where are we going as a society with this increasing technology, this increasing disconnection from nature? I mean, for example, this idea of, say, ADHD that boys are increasingly being labelled with and medicated, given serious medication with. There's an alternative conceptualization of what they actually have, and it's called nature deficit disease. Do you know what I mean? And you know what? When you read up on it, it makes a powerful argument. So I'm just thinking long term. We all have to do what we have to do with our own kids, and certainly I introduce technology to my kids. I've no problem with that, But I'm just, like I say, I'm thinking more globally,
Yeah, no, I agree with you. And the ADHD thing, I don't fully believe in it, because you find that most of those ADHD people who are diagnosed with ADHD, you can't take a blood test and say you've got ADHD in your blood. It's really a questionnaire. You do these things, and if you do these things, you have ADHD. It's more a categorization of behaviors than a medical diagnosis.
There's an alternative ways of interpreting all of them behaviors that are on that questionnaire,
Absolutely. And you'll find it's mostly boys who are diagnosed with it, and they're really diagnosed with being a boy, as far as I'm concerned. And you'll find that boys and girls just learn in different ways. Girls are happy to sit down and take instruction, and you sit down to class and be good and take instruction. Boys a lot of time want to be with a man who do whatever. He's going to play football, but they're learning. Do you want to learn through doing? I know I always learn through doing, and I love learning through doing. If you sit down and you bring me through stuff, that's why I never really connect with school. If you bring me through stuff, I am bored, completely bored. But I love like I learn a lot online, and I love learning through doing stuff. Like, I have a purpose. I want to set up a business. I learn everything I need. I have everything that I can possibly learn about setting up a business. I learn everything I can possibly learn about setting up websites, making videos. I'll do all that, but I'm doing it with a purpose. I'm not doing it because someone says you have to learn A, B, and C, and I want you to learn all these facts. I'm really excited about history. This 1916 thing coming up. I'm reading my boys book after book about 1916, but they're all kind of story books. They're about history, but they're about stories of things that happened to people at that time, and that's really exciting for me. That it's a lot more exciting for me to hear the stories about things that happened in the past, rather than saying, okay, this is there was these people died. These people was born in this day and he was died in this day. Remember that, because that's going to be in the test or whatever happens to be, that kind of thing. The story is much more exciting to me, and I think boys just everyone's different. I'm not saying every boy learns this way necessarily, but I think in general, boys learn through doing. You lectured in engineering, Liam, and a lot of engineering is doing.
I'm wondering, Alan, if you do fuck all, do you learn fuck all? Okay, guys, I think we should wind it up. Normally we run for 45 minutes, but we got a little late into recording tonight. Just a thought to leave you with. Often in discussion around parenting issues, it was often said to me, have you ever heard a man on his deathbed saying, I wish I'd spent more hours in the office? And I just think that's an interesting reflection to leave it with tonight. Just to say, looking forward for this year, 2016, we're hoping to put together a website. We have the domain HowShouldManLive.com, in which we'd like to curate all of these ongoing blabs and hopefully generate a wider and broader and an ongoing conversation. We can revisit a lot of these issues. So again, tonight particularly, I'd like to thank you, Alan, for joining us. I had said to you at some stage, you could have always just come in with the kids and say hi, guys, and all the rest. And again, Derek, appreciated on all your help in trying to spread word. I think it's a slowly and a developing thing. And of course, Alan, my co-host, I will leave it at that, guys. And I hope in the reutilization of these, we can find out other topics that we as guys would like to address for ourselves going forward. Okay.
Cheers,
Excellent.
lads. Take
Listen,
care.
thanks a
Brilliant,
lot,
thanks a
Liam.
lot, guys.
All
Good
right,
meeting
just
you,
switch
Alan.
off.
All the
Thanks, guys.
best.
Thanks a lot, Liam.
Right.
See you.
Thanks, guys. Thanks.
You're going. I just switched off the recording there. I think it's off,
So-
Alan. Yeah, I think it. Alan, can you just check that it's off?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it is now. Yeah.
Oh, it's shooting off and on actually. So
Yeah.
it's okay.
Okay, thanks, guys.
All right.
Now, Liam,
Hold on.
just kill that, and we'll switch to Skype. Okay.